Manx Radio's Update with Beth Espy.
Well, first, my good evening. It's Tuesday, the 27th of August. Welcome to your daily roundup of what's been happening on the Isle of Man over the past 24 hours. Coming up today, what is the final cost of the Liverpool ferry terminal? Well, that question's been asked again, but when are we likely to know the answer? Also tonight, we reflect on MGP 2024. Not so good for two visitors from London who appeared in court today, and also, it seems, for some businesses around the mountain course. But later, some positive news when it comes to children on the island having somewhere new to play. All that, plus we'll keep you up to date on the road situation around the island. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can text 166 177. First of all, Christian Jones has the latest news roundup for us.
The Department of Home Affairs has confirmed portable cells are beginning to be used by prisoners categorised as low risk. It's part of efforts to alleviate overcrowding, with the number of inmates almost reaching maximum capacity. All 24 portable cells have now undergone the necessary risk assessments and security checks. The Department of Infrastructure has confirmed restoration work at Tramway Terrace on Douglas Promenade are to resume. The work will involve essential structural improvements and installation of a replacement roof. The terrace, which is a registered building, had seemed to be destined for demolition after an independent structural report, but this was disputed by experts who conducted surveys, concluding the building was not beyond repair. And a new Manx barge has been crowned for the next 12 months. The island's most worthy poet is appointed in the role as part of an annual competition. This year, Jordan Kenyuk was named as the 10th bard in the inaugural competition in Colby. In international news now, and Israel has rescued a hostage in what it says was a complex operation in southern Gaza. Qazi Farhan al-Qadi, who's a father of 11, was taken while at work in a packing factory on the 7th of October. 108 hostages are still being held. The Conservatives say the UK Prime Minister is gearing up for tax hikes in the autumn budget, despite promising he wouldn't before the election. Sir Keir Starmer's warned of things getting worse before they get better, blaming a £22 billion black hole in public finances. And reality TV star Spencer Matthews has made history by becoming the first person to run 30 marathons in 30 days on sand. He's raised more than £250,000 for charity. Those are the updated news headlines next at 6.
Thanks very much, Christian. Not a challenge I'd fancy anytime soon. Now the weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Do you know what? It's going to get better because the outbreaks of rain will soon largely die out, with only patchy drizzle remaining, and the strong southerly wind will ease to become generally fresh. Skies are going to remain mostly cloudy though, so there will be hill fog around the higher roads. Over the north, some bright intervals possible. You might be able to sit out later. Maybe not. Maximum temperatures will be around 19 Celsius. Then overnight, dry. Tomorrow, mostly dry. A few sunny intervals. You might think it's summer, and just the risk of a scattered shower later. Moderate or fresh southwest winds, and maximum temperatures tomorrow once again will be around 19. But, and here is the good news, get out your trumpet, a settled and dry spell of weather will be developing through the rest of the week and the weekend as high pressure builds. The weather must have heard that MGP is over. Sunset this evening, 8:20. Sunrise tomorrow morning, 6:20.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
TE Carbon provide new memorial stones, grave renovations, new inscriptions and fire hearths. Visit us at Hope Street, Castletown, or at Broadway, Douglas, or call 844 440. TE Carbon, here when you need us.
Ambitions Recruitment Consultants, covering all business sectors in the Isle of Man. Register online or email your CV to info@ambitions.co.im or ring 614 841. Ambitions, for all your recruitment needs, however big or small.
We all need peace of mind. That's where Peace of Mind Manx Will Writing Services can help you. From just £149 plus VAT. Call 671 001 or go to peaceofmind.co.im.
Most builders start with a hammer and saw. Manx Construction start with ideas and imagination. For new build, extension or home office, Manx Construction offer full service from planning to completion. Call Tony on 452 688.
You're listening to Update on Manx Radio. It's just coming up to 5 past 5. Now, two tourists from London who entered closed roads twice during the Manx Grand Prix have been fined £1,400 each. Russell Gray, who's 68, and Yisan Chin, who's 66, both appeared at Douglas Courthouse today where they pleaded guilty to contravening road closure rules. Well, Siobhan Fletcher was in court and joins me now. So first of all, Siobhan, what do we know about this?
Well, Beth, the pair entered the course at Ballycrane Crossroads at 6:10 yesterday evening, whilst racing was underway. The court heard that the couple were visiting the island on their boat, which was moored in Peel Marina, and they'd walked to St John's to watch the races for the first time. A sector marshal described the closure as being clearly marked with signage and yellow railings, which you would have to move out of the way to access the road. He spotted Gray and Chin walking towards him and away from Tynwald Hill. They were guided off the road and directed to the rear of a private residence where others were watching the racing.
So surely then that should have been the end of the story.
In short, it wasn't though. Later, when racing had finished but roads were still closed, the couple were again seen entering the restricted area. The sector marshal said he saw another marshal try and send them back, but they ignored them and continued to walk along the side of the road back towards Tynwald Hill. Gray was said to have told the marshal, "I know I can do this." Police were then called and the pair were arrested at 7:07. In interview, Chin said she knew the roads were closed and admitted they were told they were committing an offence, but she thought it was safe enough.
So what did they say in their defence when they were in court today?
Well, the advocate representing the pair told the court they entered the closure through a gap in the fencing, but weren't actually walking on the course itself and were trying to leave the way they came. He said they wrongly assumed that they could enter the road as they saw a rider who'd retired walking along with marshals in that area.
So, as we heard, they were both fined over £1,000. Did the Deputy High Bailiff have anything to say when she handed out that sentence?
Yes, so she also ordered them each to pay £125 in prosecution costs, and in sentencing them, Deputy High Bailiff Rachel Braidwood acknowledged that they didn't enter onto the actual course, rather they approached the course, so essentially a fenced-off area by the side of the highway in the approach to the road. But she reiterated that road closures for TT and Manx Grand Prix are strictly enforced for a reason. She said the roads are closed because the roads become a racetrack. It's for the safety of riders and spectators. And she added that she found it absolutely baffling when marshals were around that they went back out onto closed roads.
Thank you very much indeed, Siobhan. You'll be able to read that story in full at manxradio.com. 7.5 minutes past 5. So, the final cost of the Isle of Man ferry terminal in Liverpool is still unknown. Infrastructure Minister Tim Crookall's been asked for an update on the overall price tag in a Tynwald question for written answer from Douglas North MHK John Wannenberg. Lewis Foster has this report for us.
In July last year, Chief Minister Alfred Cannon said no one would have embarked on the Liverpool ferry terminal project had they known what it would come to cost. Well, so far, no one does know what it's come to cost. There are ballpark estimates, of course. Around 80 million seems to be the latest educated guess. Bear in mind, when the project began in 2015, 80 million was more like 18 million, or so said the initial estimates. The question for written answer comes around 2 months after the site on Merseyside opened its doors for passengers, and 2 months since Manx Radio put the same question to Minister Crookall.
That's a really hard question to answer because, there was so much work done underground, if you like, on this that we've seen over the last 4 years, and it was very, very expensive. And you had 2 years near enough of COVID, and you had what went on in Ukraine, so prices increased and all sorts of things. But as I said, it's an ongoing discussion. The final cost hasn't been decided yet.
And that's pretty much the gist of this latest answer. Minister Crookall tells Mr Wannenberg the final build costs and therefore final account of the Isle of Man ferry terminal Liverpool project have not yet been fully determined. This is as expected at this time, he says, and is compliant with the terms of the type of contract. The NEC4ECC option C, rolls off the tongue, is a target cost contract with an activity schedule. That means the contractor estimates the project cost, including overheads and preliminaries at the tender stage. This estimate, he says, becomes the target cost. The caveat is that adjustments to the target cost can occur during the contract project through compensation events. Final payment, therefore, is assessed by the project manager post-completion, with mechanisms in place for dispute resolution if the assessment is contested. Under that type of contract framework, a final account is typically settled 65 weeks after construction is complete, and therefore at this point in time, he says, we're unable to confirm the final cost, as the final account is still to be determined and settled. So, well, if we try and pinpoint the completion of construction at some time around March this year when birthing trials started, 65 weeks puts us into late spring/summer 2025 before we may know the true final cost.
Lewis Foster reporting. We imagine there may be many more questions on this to come. Just gone 5:10. The Department of Home Affairs remains optimistic about the Isle of Man prison's future after it underwent an overhaul of its processes. It comes after the department referred itself to the prison watchdog after multiple inmates took their own lives while in custody. Jane Poole-Wilson is the minister.
There have been a lot of challenges at the prison, actually, but I am very pleased with the work the prison has been undertaking. As listeners may be aware, we had an inspection and there were a number of actions arising out of that, and we've obviously had the recent findings from the inquests into deaths in custody, and a lot of work had already been progressed around that because we'd called in the prisons and probation ombudsman as well to offer an independent view and further advice. So a lot of hard work has been undertaken and some significant changes made. There is still more work to do, but I'm really pleased with all the staff and the governor and the way they have worked so hard. And I have to say as well, the staff in the Department for Home Affairs who work very closely with the prison to support them in all of that work. So it's a work in progress.
That is Justice and Home Affairs Minister Jane Poole-Wilson, who is speaking on Man in Line today. You can go back and watch that actually at manxradio.com or our Facebook or YouTube channel. In other news, she also confirmed portable cells are beginning to be used by prisoners categorised as low risk. We're told that's part of efforts to alleviate prison overcrowding, with the number of inmates almost reaching capacity. Well, let's turn our attention to some business news now and a bid to overturn a freezing order on funds held by Standard Bank Isle of Man Limited on behalf of a Seychelles company linked with an alleged fraud involving up to $2 billion has been dismissed by Deemster Corlett in the High Court. Simon Richardson has more.
Proceedings have been issued by the Danish Customs and Tax Administration in multiple jurisdictions against Worldwide Asset Management Limited, a company incorporated in the Republic of the Seychelles. The legal team representing the Danish Customs and Tax Administration claim it had been the subject of a substantial international fraud and that it had been identified that sums held at Standard Bank are the proceeds of the laundering of the monies obtained by that fraud. The Danish authority only became aware that Worldwide Asset Management was incorporated in the Seychelles and had assets in the Isle of Man following a disclosure from Standard Bank. The initial freezing order was made in the Manx High Court to prevent the removal of assets held here while proceedings are ongoing in Dubai. Proceedings have also been issued by the Danish Customs and Tax Administration in England and Wales and the United States.
Simon Richardson reporting. And in some more business news, which has been released this afternoon, we're told unemployment on the Isle of Man fell by 3 people last month in comparison to June. However, the proportion of economically active people who are registered as out of work remains at 0.6%. That is the same as it was the previous month. Oliver Sykes has the details.
Job centre vacancies saw an increase of 129 roles in comparison to the previous month, with a total of 906. Of these positions, 55% are full-time and the remaining 45% were part-time. The International Labour Organisation estimates 692 people are unemployed and looking for work, which equates to a rate of 1.5%. Catering and entertainment, retail and other business services are among the fields with the highest number of unemployed people. Sectors with the highest number of job vacancies are in retail, medical and health services, and catering and entertainment. 164 men are unemployed, compared with 83 women. Long-term unemployment is defined as anyone who has been out of work for a year or longer. As of July, there are 21 people who fall into this category. Geographically, the East is home to the most unemployed people at 169. The North, South and West sit at 39, 27 and 12 respectively.
Oliver Sykes reporting. Well, the stock market report is brought to us by Ramsey Crookall, who tell us that UK stocks remained firmer this afternoon, lifted by index heavyweights BP and Shell, as heightened tensions between Israel and Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, along with outages in Libya, saw oil prices back above $80 per barrel. Miners also gained amid rising copper prices. The pound climbed to its strongest level against the US dollar in more than 2 years on the back of support from Friday's remarks by Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, signalling meaningful US rate cuts from next month and the more cautious comments of Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey. Oil prices were weaker, but nevertheless traded around, as we heard, $80 level due to expectations of an imminent interest cut by the US Federal Reserve. And gold prices were flat, consolidating near record highs reached last week, ahead of an inflation report which is due this week. So gold is up just slightly, 0.01 at $2,517. Brent off 1.42% at $80.09. And at the close, the FTSE 100 was up 0.24% at 8,347. And a short time ago, the Dow Jones trading up 0.01% at 41,241. And the Nasdaq was up 0.32% at 17,780.
I'm running late again. Do you know where I put my car keys?
In the fridge.
Where's my phone?
Under the dog basket.
Bye.
You haven't forgotten that we're seeing Ramsey Crookall later?
Oh, no, of course not. 5 p.m, is it?
3:45.
I'll be there.
Life is busy. That's why Ramsey Crookall's team takes time to help you make a mindful investment decision, considering all the options, giving you full control of your financial future. Less stress, more assurance.
Forgot to put my shoes on.
Oh.
See how we can make your money work for you. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, the Mountain Road was closed earlier this afternoon because of a broken down wagon and also those foggy conditions. It has now reopened, but it is still really foggy up there, so do use your lights if you're up around that area. And that weather is causing some issues. There are some delays down at the airport and also down with the steam packet as well. We're told that the Manannan was going to be leaving Douglas at around 5, but just looking out into the harbour now, it's still there at the moment. So obviously a little bit of a slower turnaround with that. And the Manxman is due to go out to Heysham this evening at 19:45, but it's not due to get into Douglas until 7:05. So we expect there's probably going to be a little bit delay on that. So if you're planning on travelling anywhere this evening, whether it's on the sea or in the air, then it's well worth just checking the website, which you can find the link to at manxradio.com in our traffic and travel section first of all.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at Quayside.
It's 17.5 past 5. Now, trespassing on railway lines, playing knock-a-door run, swearing and going into disused buildings are just some of the antisocial behaviour issues that have been reported to police recently. The summer holidays have been in full swing, although they do go back to school a week on Wednesday, and officers tell us they've been responding to some minor and not so minor incidents in their respective communities. Joanna Whittle is from the early action team, and she told us often the figure between an initial meeting and a second one with troubled youngsters often drops.
Some young people need a second bite of the cherry. The figure between those that need to be seen a second time and those that need to be seen a third time again drops dramatically. So there is a high success rate. I'm also open to the fact that some people will say, well, maybe they wouldn't have done it anyway. Well, maybe we're just being doubly sure that they wouldn't have done it anyway. But if we're stopping one young person from taking a journey that will ultimately end in the secure children's home or with a significant criminal record that's going to close so many doors for them going forwards, or stopping them ending up in Derby, then if we've saved one, I can go home and I can sleep well at night. And that's why we do what we do. We've got a lot of school refusers, and they're not given anything else. The fact that we've got children that perhaps only have a requirement of 1 or 2 hours a week at school gives them a huge amount of time to get involved in other things. And that often starts off at antisocial behaviour. If you don't communicate to a child or a young person that this isn't appropriate behaviour in the community, you're setting them up to understand that that's acceptable behaviour going forwards. You often find if you talk to somebody about shop theft, it's okay to shop theft from Tesco's, but you wouldn't do it round the corner from where you live because you know Mrs. Jones that runs that shop, that would be stealing from Mrs. Jones. And it's the education process that it doesn't matter where you're stealing it from, theft is theft.
That is Joanna Whittle, who is from the Early Action Team. It's coming up to 5:20. Government says lots is being done to tackle the island's housing crisis, but a Ramsey commissioner believes nothing is actually happening. Ewan McGuinness recently felt the need to submit a Freedom of Information request to find out about future plans for social housing after what he described as a complete lack of communication. He and Chair of the Housing Committee, David Ashford, have been talking to Phil Gaughan.
I think one of the challenges, to be fair to this administration, which I not necessarily always am, but to be fair, is they have had a lot of challenges come up. There's been the cost of living crisis, which has put added budgetary pressure on things. They've, like I say, not had particularly the data sets to be able to prove, rather than just thinking that it's perception, actually prove the direction of travel. So there's been multiple things being fired from multiple angles from this administration to actually deal with, because housing is important, it is essential, but it's not the only issue out there. And as you know yourself, Phil, when you get hit with 10 or 12 different things at the same time, you've got to be working on all 12, and that does take up time and resource. But the important thing, like I say, for the next 2 years in terms of housing, and my role as chair of the Housing Communities Board, is to put the pressure on and try and drive forward actually delivering things on the ground.
Ewan, would you perhaps, in light of David's comments there, do you think perhaps you were a little harsh in your initial remarks?
No, I thought I was being quite generous. I don't disagree with anything David said, that what we've got is a current funding model that the DOI are now scrambling to avoid having to take from other reserves, but we aren't openly talking about this. And while we keep it all behind closed doors, that's, to my mind, how these things just drag on, and that's what we're seeing. We're having these quiet chats and information not being provided and whatever have you, that's resulting in stagnation. And it sounds great what you're suggesting as potential options and discussions to be had. Do I have any faith that any of this will be done before the next general election? Honestly, no. And the reality is that you've got housing waiting lists that are staying where they are or increasing. We've got people needing homes and nothing being done about it. Oh, sorry, lots being done about it, but nothing actually happening and any results occurring.
That is Ramsey Commissioner Ewan McGuinness, and you also heard there from the Chair of the Housing Committee, David Ashford. And you can hear more from both of them on the latest episode of Perspective, which is available now to download as a podcast at manxradio.com. We're going to have some good news now. It is 5:22. That's not the good news. The good news is children on the Isle of Man are being offered a new inclusive place to play thanks to two sisters from Iran. Now, the All Land Play Centre in Douglas has been set up by Lala and Maybody, who left their home country to be able to start their own business. The indoor centre is accessible to those with disabilities and has been officially opened by the Mayor of Douglas, Natalie Byron-Tier.
I mean, we don't have enough indoor leisure activities on the island as a whole, and city centres are changing across the whole of the UK, and people want to be able to have decent quality leisure activities in the city centre, and we're seeing a little bit more of that now, and I hope it continues. I think, offering a facility that's for children specifically, that's where the excitement comes from. We have lots of outdoor activities, but indoors we don't have enough of. If we want to encourage young families to stay here, to come here, then we have to offer some leisure activities for them. We always want to see more people using the city centre. As I say, the demographic city centres specifically are changing quite a lot now, with everybody doing online shopping and things. But if we can offer more unique facilities within the city centre, then hopefully that's going to bring more people down.
We have a relative who lives in London, and we were looking for a country that is good for investment and raising a child, and she suggested Isle of Man, and we found out that this amazing country has a low crime rate and safety in business and low tax system, so we decided to apply for the Isle of Man. And from the first moment that we saw this beautiful country from the airplane, we fell in love with it. We had a friend who has a disabled child, and once she told us that they're not going out as much as they would like because people sometimes give them looks. These looks are sometimes from curiosity and sometimes from pity, and both make them very uncomfortable. So we decided to build a safe environment where no one has to be worried about being looked at.
What a lovely story. You can find out much more about that at manxradio.com. Coming up to 5:25. Well, the sports editor, Rob Pritchard, who is now a sidecar passenger officially, I think we can say that, Rob. Good MGP?
Indeed, despite all the weather, we managed to make
Did
it
it rain?
through.
I didn't notice.
Just a little bit. Okay, first off tonight, we'll take a look at football very quickly. FC Isle of Man slumped to back-to-back defeats over the bank holiday weekend with a late 2-1 loss at Stockport Town in the NWCFL Premier Division yesterday afternoon. After a Daniel Lewis striker put Stockport in front of the first minute, the Ravens equalised through Sean Doyle with just over 20 minutes remaining. But substitute Jamie Walsh found the net for the hosts in the 87th minute to hand the Ireland side their 4th defeat in their last 5 games, and it sees them drop to 13th in the league table, 10 points off the top. Well, FC Isle of Man will be back in action this coming weekend away at Colne at 3 p.m. on Saturday. Elsewhere, the Isle of Man women's cricket team secured silverware this weekend by winning the 2024 Women's Valletta Cup in Malta. The Manx side beat Greece by 7 wickets in Sunday's final of the event, reaching the target of 91 runs in just 8.5 overs. For the Ireland squad, Lucy Barnett produced the standout batting display, managing 67 not out off 34 balls. Along with claiming the Cup honours, 2 Isle of Man players took individual prizes for their performances across the tournament. Jo Hicks' haul of 10 wickets saw her named bowler of the tournament, whilst Barnett was named most valuable player and batter of the tournament after amassing 282 runs, including 3 half-centuries. Well, the Isle of Man finished the competition with a perfect record of 4 wins from 4 matches. Outside of the final, they also beat Greece in the group phase, along with taking victories over hosts Malta as well as Serbia. And in cycling, one of the Isle of Man's pro competitors has been in action earlier today in China, as Sam Brand contested the opening stage of this year's Tour of Hainan. He and Team Novo Nordisk managed a highest finish of 22nd through Declan Irvin. The second stage of the event takes place tomorrow. Meanwhile, the island also had representatives out at the Junior Tour of Wales, which concluded yesterday. 3 members of Team Utmost IOM were involved, with Ivan Sorby their highest overall finisher in 38th. Elsewhere for the Manx squad, Ori Lund ended the campaign 72nd in the general classification. Their other teammate James Kinraid was a non-finisher.
Thanks very much, Rob. And just thinking about MGP, it already seems like quite a long time ago now, but I understand Government House have been full of praise for the organisers and those who've been taking part.
They have indeed. They've released a statement on social media in the last 20 minutes or so. And just to read out a little bit of it, it says, His Excellency and Lady Lorimer applaud all those who managed to stay the distance. Competitors, support teams, marshals, spectators and the motorsport team. You all showed true grit, which together with the generous offers of help from the great Manx public shows what a tremendous effort the Manx Grand Prix can be despite the rain.
Despite that rain, yeah. Oh, I tell you, it's going to be sunny next week.
I think we've seen enough of it.
I think we've
really
seen enough of it. We really have. Rob, thank you very much indeed. That is all from Update this evening. Coming up in the next few minutes, it's an Island Life special with Amy Griffiths. It's all about planning. You don't want to miss this one. It'll be followed by Greatest Hits with Chris Kinley, who has left his leathers behind for tonight. Or maybe not. The Folk Show then with John Barker. And then Rhiann Evans will be here with After Hours from 10 p.m. As ever, if you've got a news story happening in your area, we'd love to hear from you. newsroom@manxradio.com is the best email address to get in touch with us. And you can head over to manxradio.com and see all the podcasts that are available in there, including our newscasts, which are the news interviews in full. Ben will be back with breakfast from 6 a.m. tomorrow. I'll be back from 5 tomorrow. Have a great evening.